No, not in this one. Okay.
I've got Maureen's now. Thank you. Okay, we'll call the meeting. We'll call the meeting to order, this Board of Education regular meeting on August 20th. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and salute to the New Mexico flag in English and in Spanish, as well as the acknowledgement of tribal land.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Saludo la bandera del Estado de Nuevo México, el símbolo Zia de amistad perfecta entre culturas unidas. We acknowledge the original people of the land, the Tesuque Pueblo people, and other tribal nations, and ask them to walk with us today as we share and learn together. Thank you. Let the record show that Secretary Garcia and Board Member Cashman are not in attendance. And Board Member Cashman had informed us of this, so I think we call that excused. We are on to approval of the agenda. Any changes, and if not, may I have a motion?
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we are going to go into executive session. Board Member Carrillo has volunteered to take us into executive session. Board Member Carrillo.
In accordance with the Open Meetings Act, regarding executive sessions, we'll be going into executive session for A, threatened or pending litigation, and B, discussion of purchase, acquisition, and discussion of real property, both in accordance with New Mexico Statute 1978-1015.
Okay, we are now in executive session.
Oh, we have to vote on it.
Oh, sorry. Moving into executive session. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Steve moved.
Yeah.
And I second.
I think Lorraine seconded. And Back
It's
in
off
Black
now.
started playing.
It's off now.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. We said that. Any opposed? Okay, we are in executive session. Martinez has the honors, it would appear.
Good evening, Board President Noble, Superintendent, Dr. Garcia, board members. Germán Martinez will be serving as interpreter for anybody who would need services. Please, if you would raise your hand. Buenas tardes, buenas noches, buenas noches, Presidente Noble, Superintendente Doctora García. Mi nombre es Germán Martínez. Asistiré con cualquier solicitud de traducción. Si alguien ocupa esa ayuda, por favor, levante la mano. Gracias.
Thank you very much. And on to item 4, the School Board Showcase Attributes Project, which is pilot programs at Gonzales Community School.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and I didn't catch it. It should have said attributes of the graduate project. I didn't catch that. And so I'd like to introduce Assistant Principal Chris Lopez from Gonzales. Please come forward. Started with this project when he was actually teaching at Gonzales. And I think I have mentioned to you that we've been piloting a project with Innovate Educate on project-based learning and how do we measure the outcomes that measure some of the attributes of the graduate. You all had expressed an interest. And so I thought this would make a great Board of Education School Board Showcase for the evening tonight, because we still don't have the kids ready to come and sing yet. So with that said, Mr. Lopez, take it away.
Hello. Good evening, President Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia. My name is Chris Lopez. I am a recent hire as an assistant principal at Gonzales. Before that, I spent 10 years as a English language arts teacher at Gonzales. As I started my career, I'm a graduate of Eastern New Mexico University. It was heavily put upon us that we probably will walk into a classroom without much. While that isn't true, my training stayed with me, and from that I developed curriculums that were based on projects. I created my curriculum around the standards, first the New Mexico State standards and then later the Common Core curriculum standards, always with an eye on being innovative and creative. And that's what I expected from my students, is to be innovative and creative. If you have nothing and you're to create, what can you create? And so one of my projects that I took on, and when Superintendent Garcia approached us, Gonzales, about creating or being part of the pilot program for Innovate Educate, at the time it was Levers, we were looking to move forward with this project. It was called Guppy Tank. Guppy Tank is a take on Shark Tank. My students were to become entrepreneurs and develop an item or a service that they could then promote and create something to present to somebody. We were always hoping, my brother-in-law is the CEO of Meow Wolf, we were always hoping to get in front of him, but alas, he's busy. So we were never able to get in front of him, but the students would always end up presenting. And I brought along a commercial that one of my students from last year created. She recruited her brother and was a very exacting director on this, and a neighbor, and also a neighbor. You will see what they created, but this was created with in mind that these students would be able to present, to show this to a crowd, to develop some of the soft skills that we are looking toward and giving to our graduates. So she did an excellent job. She is currently a student at Santa Fe High School. Her name's Valeria Ramirez. I am very proud of my students' work through this. We've done Guppy Tank 4 times now. Each time it's gotten better. And we were looking to make this cross-curricular. However, for this particular project, it became organically cross-curricular. The students looked at developing commerce, looking into markets, working with numbers. Our math teacher got involved. Our science teachers in the past have gotten involved with developing what the students wanted to make. Now this one is quite a concept. This particular Sweet Dreams is a pillow that captures dreams. So I'll let the commercial speak for itself.
Wow! That was awesome. I better go tell Riley about my dream. Hi, Riley. Hi, Tony. I had the coolest dream ever. Really? Me too. What was your dream about? I can't remember. Me either. Does this ever happen to you? Do you forget the best of dreams? Well, look no more with the all-new Sweet Dreams pillow. Because this revolutionary pillow records them for you. The pillow uses sensors to capture your dreams. Simply connect the pillow to our Sweet Dreams app and dream away. This pillow is soft and 100% cotton, making your sleep even more comfortable. Not only that, but the pillow comes in many patterns. So call now, don't wait. At 1-800-SWEET-DREAMS. That's 1-800-SWEET-DREAMS. Or visit our website at www.sweetdreams.com. That's www.sweetdreams.com. $25.99 plus shipping.
Due to the nature of this product, all sales are final. Sweet Dreams is not responsible for any mishaps while in the use of this product.
So this was an 8th grade project. This was an 8th grade student. And I was very excited when Dr. Garcia presented us with this pilot project because I thought we could take something like this and really grow it through cross-curriculum. I think something like this gives us a better idea of who our students are as people, and it gives them the opportunity to showcase who they are as people in a broader way, much more so than a two-dimensional standard assessment.
And so from that, they also are picking out various attributes of the graduate that the kids would exhibit, right? Whether it's, the perseverance or, how to conduct themselves or be more, civic-minded, how they're going to use it in other ways. So I'm really anxious to see now how the measurements come and the standards that they'll be measuring. I mean, because as you said, it involved math, it involved, other topics. Now this will be expanded, but it's just sort of a sample of how project-based learning can then be tied to the attributes of the graduate, measure the academic standards, public speaking, right? I mean, all of those different aspects, so. And we have, I think, 4 other schools that are part of the pilot.
I think so.
But thank you so much, Chris.
You're welcome.
Madam President, please.
Thank you very much. Secretary Garcia.
Just really quick, project-based learning, what an excellent idea. Thank you for thinking outside the box and
Absolutely.
bringing that forward as into thinking of the commerce portion of that.
Yes.
Very
Thank
well
you.
needed throughout the country, and which makes this world actually run back and forth. Actually, mypillow.com. If you actually read the history of that gentleman that owns mypillow.com, very interesting gentleman, and
Oh.
he's done very well. But what an excellent job that the student did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to public forum. Dr. Ryan.
Board President Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, we have 3 people that have signed up for public forum. That would be, so if you'd like, I'll go through the rules.
Please, and if there were some folks who arrived late who would like to speak at public forum, we'll allow that as well.
If they will come up and see me, I'll put them on the list. So the rules are please speak, listen and speak with respect. No uncivil conduct will be permitted. Please do not discuss any specific student who is not your own. No sharing of time. Self-monitor and observe the 3-minute time limit. I'll give you a 30-second warning when your time is almost up. Public commentary and dialogue is allowed only during the public forum, not throughout the meeting. Please search for answers on common grounds. You may speak on any topic, whether it is on the agenda or not. Your input will be taken into consideration. Please be advised that the board may discuss your issue during the meeting, but by law, the board cannot take action on items that are not on the board agenda. So with that, we have 3 speakers. If you would come down over here, I'll call your name, and then if you will repeat your name to the board so they know who's talking. It's the first is, I think it's Yuki Murata, Maddie Mahoney, and Aaron Durwald. Is that correct? So.
Hi, thank you. My name's Yuki Murata, and I'm speaking to you as a parent of a Carlos Gilbert 3rd grader and as a concerned citizen of Santa Fe. My concern is about the Run, Hide, and Fight video. I deeply appreciate the intention of distributing such a video to keep our kids and our community safe. But I do not think that this video is an age-appropriate way to address the crisis of gun violence in our schools and our country. I ask you to postpone the distribution of this video until we can engage child mental health experts to evaluate the best way to proceed with safety trainings that are age-appropriate and give our community skills and security in our uncertain world. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Maddie Mahoney. First, I wanted to thank you so much to the board members and Superintendent Garcia who replied to emails and letters that were sent over the weekend, and for your very quick response to put the video on hold and listen to our concerns. I come before you tonight to ask the district to please reconsider this video, especially for our youngest students. As a mom to a 5- and 7-year-old, I feel this video is both inadequate in its instructions and unnecessarily frightening for young viewers. I understand that Run, Hide, Fight is a national standard, but our schools do not have to go out of their way to promote certain aspects that clearly do not apply to youngsters, such as advising them to throw school supplies at intruders. I understand this advice is given as a last resort, but how do I explain that concept to my kindergartner? I am worried that some of the comments made by the district, intentionally or unintentionally, pit some parents against others and some schools against others. This isn't a debate between parents who want action and parents who don't. I really hope that going forward, the discussion is not framed this way. All parents want their schools to have emergency drills and protocol. All parents want their kids to feel safe and secure at school. All parents want to know that the schools are taking action and that that action is effective and sensible. While there's sure to be a level of disagreement, certainly we can all agree that we speak to 6-year-olds very differently than we talk to 16-year-olds. This video makes no distinction. I understand that an opt-out option is being offered as a solution. If the goal of this video is to provide consistency in messaging, as the district has said, then how does an opt-out, take-it-or-leave-it approach get us toward that goal? If we are going to spend taxpayer dollars and school resources to do this, we need to have more than a here it is, watch it or don't watch it. We didn't invent this and our video is tamer than the rest out there. And back to that national standard. We all know that national standards when it comes to our kids aren't always the best. Why can't we be better? Why can't our schools meet and surpass this standard? We have the opportunity right now to create the best, most effective protocol using both our security team and mental health experts. I know that our district has the ability to design effective and useful protocol for kids of all ages, not a one-fits-any-age approach. And I know that it's unacceptable that this burden has fallen on all of you. Let's be better than what's out there. Let's create something that we can stand behind with pride and that we know is the best way to address this problem with efficacy and sensitivity. I think all of our kids deserve that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm Erin Dorwald, and I just wanted to add my words to the conversation. We're in uncharted territory and living in unprecedented times. It's hard not to talk about this issue without getting emotional. Before this happened, my son actually brought the subject up a few days ahead of the robocall that came on Friday night. Because I have some training as a clinician and I do suicide prevention in the schools and have some background in trauma informed practices, I felt equipped to have that conversation with my son. I know that not every parent in the district feels that way. And I feel, as my colleagues, my friends have stated for the record, that we need to do a little more homework before we apply a one-size-fits-all intervention. Given that we are in uncharted territory, we don't have a map for this awful, horrific problem that we're dealing with. But we do have a map for other kinds of sensitive topics that we do prevention in the schools for, like suicide. And at the Sky Center, we do not present a one-size-fits-all approach for K through 12. We would never present one video to talk about suicide prevention for all age groups. And so this is just an appeal to look at how we're gonna do this so that we don't have a one-size-fits-all approach. And also when we deliver that kind of sensitive information, we make sure that the people who are trained that are in the classrooms delivering that sensitive information, and that should anyone get triggered or have issues with the kind of information that we're presenting, we know how to handle it. So I think there's additional staff training that needs to happen, teacher training, administrator training, before we just simply deliver a video that I'm not sure has even had any consultation from mental health experts yet. I don't know. We haven't received an answer to that information. So for the record, I appreciate what we're all trying to do. None of us have the perfect answer. This is impossible to wrap our heads around, that our children might have to deal with an active shooter in our schools. I didn't state I have a son at Acequia Madre in the 4th grade. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We have one more speaker.
Hi, everyone. I'm Teresa. Oh, yeah. And I'm not totally familiar with this format, so please excuse my clumsiness. Excuse me?
The request
Yeah,
was speak up
yeah.
close to the mic.
So I just wanted to support and reiterate what's already been said, that I have a child at Carlos Gilbert. He's in the 3rd grade. And just kind of pass along a little anecdote about, I guess, 4 months ago. I went to the school librarian to speak with her about a book that my son Griffin was checking out and reading the stories, and was not sleeping at night because his imagination is that active at age 8. It was scary stories to tell in the dark, and he could not effectively differentiate the imaginative story that he was taking in from his immediate reality. So I think that that really begs the question, what are we putting into their minds, and how are we helping to kind of help them assimilate and process the information? So I guess what I would ask is just that there would be mental health professionals involved in this discussion and in, participating in finding a solution. And I also, I don't feel like I have a solid answer. I know that you're up against a lot of conflicting input right now, but yeah, I don't feel that the video that was put out is something that would be in the best interest of my 8-year-old or his peers. And as far as the opt-out option, I feel like has a lot of potential to, for him to show up the next day to the distorted stories and interpretations of his peer group, kind of regurgitating the information, which again, he hasn't, or they haven't had the opportunity to really process effectively with a professional, or if need be. So I feel like that could cause even more problems amongst the peer groups. And the last thing that I wanted to share and ask for, I guess, some action on, and again, I don't know how this would look specifically, but one of my biggest fears in watching the video was I feel like there's a culture of video games. It is what it is. I think it needs to be made very clear that I watching the video felt like there could actually be excitement around participating in this type of hide under your desk, throw the eraser kind of. I feel like there are children who might consider that an exciting opportunity. And so I think that there needs to be a discussion too around what some of these kids are being consistently exposed to and the difference between what you're trying to impart to them and experience with screen time. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just concludes public forum.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. And thank you all for coming. We don't typically discuss the issues presented at public forum. This is on the superintendent's update, which will come in a few on our agenda, and we will discuss briefly there and look for guidance from the superintendent and our staff attorney on where we dance close to how much we discuss this, given that it is not on the agenda, because we are subject to the Open Meetings Act. So I'm sure we will discuss it a little bit shortly as the superintendent gives us her update on the Run, Hide, Fight video, and I would imagine we will likely put it on a future agenda. But for now, we are moving on to the union update. And the president of the NEA is not here for a union update. She did send a little update, which said, in essence, it's on it was on a joint text, wasn't it?
Yeah.
She said, for the most part, the opening of schools went smoothly, except for a few things around school start and end times for staff, duty schedules, and advisory/RTI stuff. These have been problematic for years, but by and large, things went well. Have a good meeting. She also said most people are very happy with their raises. Thank you. So that is the brief update from our teachers union president. Now to board announcement and follow-up. The 2019 NMSBA Student Scholarship. Am I doing this?
Yes, and we have, Ruth, do we have the photos? The student couldn't be here, but we thought we'd like for you to see the photos of the student. Dr. Sanchez did present the certificate, and she was very grateful. And she said this was really, that $1,000 was going to make a big difference for her because she's working hard to try to make ends meet to be able to go to school. And so she was very appreciative that she won that award.
On that, I just want to thank the NMSBA. I know that if Maureen were here, she'd probably echo that in Santa Fe, when it comes to things like this, we often feel very overlooked. So this is, for me, what is this, almost August? This is like the 9th time, if we didn't get it this year, 9th time in a row, we would have been overlooked. And Ms. Price knows all of the number of years we put forth really amazing candidates. So I'm glad they made the field a little larger and were able to include a few of the large districts.
Yes, and I would say I have seen some good applications go forward, some great ones in the previous years, but this one knocked my socks off. So we're very proud of Johanna Olivia Umana, and there she is with her check and certificate for $1,000, having been selected by the statewide School Board Association for a student scholarship. And I did have a board announcement, which she was unable to be here because she's traveling, but I have said that she can come pick up her certificate, but just wanted to thank Jolanda Field, who has served on the audit committee for many, many years as a representative whom I appointed there, and Susan Duncan appointed before me. And it might surprise everyone to know that it's difficult to find financially savvy people to serve on the audit committee, particularly those who are parents. And Jolanda had a child in the public schools for many, many years, and actually I did ask her to continue, and she said that because she no longer had her child in the public schools, that she knew the committee needed a member who had that. So I did manage to find one of those to replace her, but these are often unnoticed positions, and I just wanted to acknowledge her and thank her very much. Nice certificate for Yolanda. Board Member Cuddio, did you have an additional board announcement?
Of course, because it's the first week of school and the first Friday for football. Okay, so both teams have opening games this coming Friday night. Santa Fe High School is going to be hosting at Ivahead Stadium Las Vegas Robertson, which was the runner-up for District 4A last year. They're always a powerhouse team. And we broke our losing streak last year against Espanola, Santa Fe High. It was like 36 games in a row. And we've been rebuilding, and we have a sophomore class now that is really leading the team. And it's incredibly exciting, we think, what's possible for this coming year for boys football. At Santa Fe High, Capital is going to be playing Crown Point. Unfortunately, they're both opening games at home. And Capital, I don't know if you read the paper yesterday, just we could very easily go to the state tournament, given the talent that we have, and it's young talent too. So for those that don't often think of the Friday night lights as a way to spend your Friday night, it really is one thing that's happening all over the United States at 7 o'clock on a Friday night is kids playing football. Soccer starts tomorrow night with both teams, boys and girls, either hosting or going to prep, and volleyball starts the week after at home. But it's just, if you just aren't involved in high school sports, I mean, it really, I think it knocks the socks off college or pro, because these kids, it's all still pure. It's all still authentic. And parents are there and community members are there, and it's just really special to root for the home team and to see cheer just going nuts, and the student body and their student section throwing baby powder at each other. You know, this is things that kids do. What are you going to say? But anyway, so we expect a really great year all the way around in sports, and it really does start this Wednesday and Friday night.
Thank you. Any other board announcements? Okay, moving on to superintendent announcements and follow-up. Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Now I lost my place. First of all, out-of-state travel, cross-country. Santa Fe High School, they're going to compete at the Jovi Hill Invitational Meet in Alamosa, Colorado, September 7th. And the Booster Club will be fundraising to make, I guess, some of that happen. I don't know why it says that on there, but it does, so it must be germane to this issue. I don't know if Lucia Pacheco Garcia is here. Nope. Ms. Garcia has served as program support specialist for the Santa Fe Public Schools, which has included facilitating and organizing trainings for general and special ed. She has been with us for quite some time, doing training with staff in crisis intervention, and we're very pleased that she will be the new principal at ZIA. And so I'm sorry that she couldn't be here today. You should have, I'm going to talk about the Run, Hide, Fight Last, so I have two quick things. The district school opening dashboard, you should have a copy of that in your flaps, do you not? No?
Nope. Under what? VII 7 should be, right? Or yes.
Is it in their board packet? But do they, where? I don't see it. Thank you. Is it under the tab, Ruth? I don't know. There's a lot of stuff missing tonight. It's not in my binder, and it's not in theirs. This is like this other thing. There's been several things missing. Okay, thank you. I was looking for the colors. Sorry about that, Ruth. So I'm just going to hit the highlights. The staffing, of course, you know, it is a continued issue, right? In terms of the number of staff or vacant FTE. Of note, we're still missing an AP at Amy Beal. And then you can go through the schools. Do we have a total here, either Tom or Howard, of the vacancies? I don't see a total on my bullet.
Total FTE vacancies.
Where is it? Oh, there it is. There's the line. So we're still total, when you include the AP and, counselors, secretarial, et cetera, 52. And then you can look at the teachers across the board. And classroom teachers, 1, 2, 4, 7, 8, 13, 15 teachers, it looks like, in the classroom. So, I really want to commend Howard and his team. They've really pulled out the stops to try to fill these vacancies. And, considering what it has been across the state and what's happening now, special ed teachers also continues to be a problem, but not as bad, I think, as last year. That's 2, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, but that's still 10 too many. So total 25 teachers if you combine special ed with general ed. If you go to the principal's checklist, all the reds have been removed. Principal checklist is at 96%, up from last week's score of 86.8. Most common delays are caused by needing data from the PED. If we go to the department checklist, facility readiness is at 95%, up from last week's score of 94%. IT readiness is at 99%, up from last week's score of 84%. Instructional materials is at 55%, up from last week's score of 48%. MSync, I think that is mainly because of the vendors, right, shipping textbooks. And then on safety readiness is at 98%, up from last week's score of 91%. So I don't think there's any surprises. We knew that we would be, going up and down on teacher vacancies. We get them hired and then they're waiting and they get an offer from Albuquerque or Rio Rancho and off they go. So and then we had a couple like late retirees and whatnot. So unless there's any questions, I think we had said we were just going to do a quick overview.
Thank you very much. Board Member Carrillo.
Just curious, why is just Aspen missing their rhino-ware?
Mr. Salvidres?
It's odd to me that he's one school.
Yeah.
And the rhino is the thing with the door lock on the classrooms.
President Noble, Member Carrillo, Superintendent Dr. Garcia. The only place that's missing is the new construction. That's what we're capturing here. It's not the entire school. Once the construction is complete, we can go and identify where it needs it. We're ready to install.
Thank you.
And if we remember, Board Member Cashman had asked whether we had the rhino locks in Santa Fe, and the answer was yes. They are here and ready to go when the construction's done.
So, excuse me. God, I'm sorry. Holy smokes. So, I understand why we have all these vacancies, and it's happens all over the country in districts like ours and states like ours. But I got to tell you, this caption under the photograph did us no good today, because I got a few calls on it. And when I was having lunch at Lit Shows, the person next to me was, basically it just says it's not only about being a sub, it's learning with the kids. So to which we all, the way it was written, said, gee, it's really great that you're learning geometry at the same time the kids are, as opposed to knowing geometry and teaching the kids. But I know that's an ongoing challenge for us and for our HR department. And I'm wondering how many people we have in the queue right now.
To be subs or to be hired?
To be hired. Because honestly, I didn't expect the number to be that large, but relative to other schools and districts our size.
We're actually doing fairly well when we compare to other districts, and our percentage is actually much lower, but that doesn't help those 25 classrooms that have long-term subs. Now, they all don't have long-term subs that are similar to the woman in this picture. But how many do we have in the queue for hire, Howard?
President Noble, members of the board, Dr. Garcia, we currently have 155 subs on the on the
No,
roster.
the question for hire for teachers.
Teachers.
Yes, how many teachers do we have in the queue for hire?
It's a single-digit number, probably 4 or 5 right now. Our focus right now is on hiring more subs. We held an event out at Ortiz last Friday. We have another one planned for a Saturday morning in September when the subs are available to accept some of those long-term vacancies. But right now, there are not a lot of teacher candidates out there that have not already been hired.
So I know we talked about, thank you very much. So I know we talked about, I don't know if scheme's the right word, that they were doing in Albuquerque around trying to bring people back that were retiring, trying to bring them back early through a contractor. And I'm wondering,
That was long-term subs, and we already have, those were
All right.
subs.
I think the thing that I was
We already
most
have the sub thing under control.
I think the thing I was most concerned with in reading about that was just that we have one school, just one missing for math. And one school, and that just was, because that's just going to obviously escalate as they go up to the next grade or whatever, go to Capital. So I know you're working hard to get people here, I really do. And, but that was a little bit alarming. Thank you.
Thank you, and I would agree, and I really appreciate the work that Dr. Garcia and this administration has done, because I think this could be much, much worse. As I think bears repeating, we are in a statewide and national crisis in terms of a teaching shortage, and it's liable to get worse before it gets better. And truly, I think that this team has done an exceptional job in keeping the vacancies to a minimum. Having said that, it is, as Board Member Carrillo points out, extremely tough to have even one vacancy, particularly in one subject in a school. And so, I guess the plea to the community is, if anybody knows anybody who will be a teacher, please send them to the Santa Fe Public Schools. I actually had an inquiry today from someone who does want to be a teacher and has been working on an alternative licensure. And, I will be encouraging him and anybody else I can, but this is something, and I really appreciate, and obviously this has been something the board has prioritized. It has been a part of key goals for the superintendent for a couple years, and I know that the superintendent has pushed really hard on this, and it's not good enough, but it also could be a lot worse, and I really appreciate the hard work that everyone has done to keep this where it is. And, we can plead with Dylan to provide context, like how many teachers there are when we have reporting on how many vacancies there are, because actually our rate as a percentage is very low. It's less than 4%, I believe. So, as vacancy rates go, and honestly, I have issues with this dashboard. It's sort of a deficit-oriented thing because it's sort of all about what's wrong, and I get it, but it is worth saying, and I do understand that the safety readiness is at 98%, but we do have Raptor at 100%, and as Board Member Carrillo pointed out, only the one Rhino lock missing at Aspen, which is because of new construction. So anyway, thank you very much. Any other comments on this one? Dr. Garcia, please continue.
Thank you. Our ADM, I thought you would like to know our average daily membership as of the 21st for students. Now, we may have students enroll that are not physically present. Our numbers typically change after Labor Day, and they go up. And so we were projected at 12,631, and students physically present on August 21st was 11,610. So that's about 1,000 students. But my understanding is that we should see, just looking at the trend data, that this should substantially change. So we'll just see. We have to monitor and see how this progresses.
Board Member Carrillo.
Was this number similar? I mean, I don't remember it being 1,000 last year, but I don't remember maybe even getting the breakdown last year. Is this normal to have
I don't
1,000?
remember. I was trying to see and find if we could find the data from last year, and I wanted to say it was half of that, but we're still continuing to scrub the data. This is, first run at this. We'll keep reviewing this every few days. And then our actual 40th day reporting day is on, was 12,436 students last year, which is about 800 difference versus 1,000. So I would imagine it'll be half of that, possibly. I really don't know. So we got to go back through and continue to look at the data and scrub the data. For example, Capitol High showed about 204 students less. That seems like a big jump, a big drop, but then there's been a big push on immigration, right? And that whole issue and many families, fleeing. So, I don't know if it's attributed to that necessarily, but potentially could. And so, we're just kind of going through the numbers and verifying, and we'll be going through and scrubbing and see where we're at. I think we'll have a better feel after Labor Day, but that was just a preliminary for you. Also, the legislative breakfast, just here is the official, semi-official, so you have that there for the breakfast. And, okay, so now about the issue around the Run, Hide, Fight video. And many of you have seen what I posted on the website. Excuse me?
Sorry.
Board member
I just got
Carrillo, yep.
So it was very confusing, all the emails we got. This says 8 to 9. One of them said 7:30 to 9, and one of them said 8 to 9:30. And it's typically 90 minutes.
So I don't know why we have 3 different dates on the times on the legislative breakfast. My understanding, it was going to be 7:30 to 9. I was surprised when I saw this evening that it's 8 to 9. I will confirm with Linda Siegel of what she sent to the legislators, and then I will just call you all individually, and I won't send you an email.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Please continue.
Yes, so on the Run, Hide, Fight video update, I wanted to discuss this and just read it into the record. There might be people watching that maybe didn't read the video or didn't get one of my emails. And, I was very, very busy today trying to prepare for this meeting, and I couldn't send long emails to a lot of people that wrote to me. And I really appreciate everybody writing. The numbers, we have, right now, about 11,000 students in our schools, so we do have children with multiple families. We did send out the robocall in English and Spanish if people wanted to view the video, because it did concern me that I didn't want to show the video and parents not know. And that was a good thing, because obviously we have parents that had concern. In terms of documented calls, and we try to cross-check what was sent to Mr. Salvidres, what did principals receive, and what was emailed to me and to board members, and it was roughly 58 families, and roughly in about 4 schools primarily. We had many schools with 0. And it's not to pit families against families. I think everybody knows their own community and knows how they feel about their children, so that is not the intent. But what I do wonder, how much parents know that these lockdowns where kids do shelter in place and do get away from windows. We have lockdown drills and shelter in place drills. Those happened last year in your schools. And so, I don't know what teachers tell the kids why they're doing that. Per se. I mean, I think there's a protocol of why, they need to be safe. So I don't think that it's that many kids aren't aware of why that is happening or why they are sheltering in place any more than we do a fire drill that is different. What has become concerning with the shelter in place, or the lockdown in particular, and with the Rhino lock, is that and even before we had the Rhino lock, teachers were supposed to lock and close their door in a lockdown. If many of these events that have happened across the country and in our own state have not happened necessarily when kids are in class. They've happened during passing periods, before school, at lunchtime. Maybe a child's been out in the restroom. And what is a child to do when that door is locked? And so, of course, you know, we want them to have some, you know, what is the safest thing for them to do? Primarily is to run and hide and to get away from danger. So that is part of the impetus. What the impetus on the video, and I'm going to read this now, but really we had 3 forums on safety. And usually this calms down and nobody is really that concerned about it. And then you have a major catastrophic event. And, you know, many of you were at those community forums where parents were adamant, why aren't you doing active shooter training? I had shied away from active shooter training for some of the reasons that our parents expressed. But you will recall there are parents that are adamant that they want their kids to have this training. And, you know, how we do the training is always up for debate. But the issue is that at the beginning of this school year, and they, you know, parents aren't aware of where this is happening, but we had 4, is it lockdowns, Mario? We had 4 shelter in place because of situations in the community the first week of school at 4 schools. So it's not like, you know, and it doesn't mean somebody was coming to shoot the school, but obviously the police department advised us that we needed to do that because of what was happening in the neighborhood. And, you know, we don't have the exact numbers. We are going to start tracking them. But I would say roughly we probably had 24, 25 events last year where there was a situation, not a drill, where we had kids have to do this. And I think that that's partly why many parents want the active shooter training for their kids. And so, so what I want to just say very quickly to get into the record that I'd like to provide, and the other thing I want to say is at the beginning of the year, teachers talk about this to their students. And so whether it's, you know, a different way other than the video, kids are talked to about why we have to shelter in place. And, you know, I know that we've said, well, maybe with the younger kids talk about a bear. You know, I think that kids know more than maybe we recognize that they do. Because from what I've heard from some of our principals and some of our teachers, younger kids are talk about it. They're aware of what's happening in their community. What, you know, from hearing from parents, what's really come to gotten into my thought process about it are the guiding questions. We have a very experienced social worker who is an MSW who can do therapy. We also have our wellness team. And I think what can really be helpful is having more guided questions for the teachers. It's not the intent to just have the video and then the kids are off to themselves to figure out what happened, but to really have the guiding questions that are appropriate for each grade level. We also have, I think, be able to have guiding questions for families in English and Spanish, because I think that some families, what we would hope is that if your kids saw the video, you would have a discussion. And that was partly part of the reason having parents see it, having a discussion with your kid at home. But every kid is different and every family is different. And if folks feel uncomfortable with that, I think they should have the choice to be able to decide what is best for their children, because everybody knows their child best. I am open to having the video again. We look at it with our behavioral health specialists and our mental health team and our social workers to see if we want to do a differentiated video. I mean, I'm not the kind of person that I'm stuck in the mud that it's only going to be this one way. I think there are ways to approach it and to keep the dialogue going. But I also think that we can't delay, you know, so maybe we do something at middle and high school or 3rd grade up. Maybe we do something a little bit different for the younger ones. I'm not sure yet. I'm still mulling over all the input that we've received. But what I am clear is that we also have to meet the needs of all of our parents. And so there are going to have to be some compromises and a way of looking at it. So, you know, nothing is absolutely, you know, cast in concrete. But what I think is really important is that we are using a multitude of strategies in our district to address safety. And this board, I want to, you know, commend the board for all the stuff you've done on safety before I ever got here. And you go to a district, I don't think there's a district safer in the United States. From your perimeter fencing, I've walked around school districts across the state that you can just walk on and go right up to a classroom and pull kids off. You know, our double entry vegetables, our single point of entry, to the things that we've added, you know, the Raptor, the Rave panic button, the communication system. We're part of the Sandy Hook Promise, the big focus on prevention, anti-bullying, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, as we look at the complaints, they're mainly from 4 schools, and mainly clustered in, you know, in a certain part of town that may not have to do as many lockdowns and shelters in place, so it's not as, you know, preeminent in their mind as some parents who are really demanding that they have that training. I know grade level from 6th grade up, we did not have any, and from the other schools, you know, they're scattered, 1 or 2, 3 here and there. So, you know, I want to really be responsive and to look at how we continue to make, you know, safety our top priority. I also have to recognize that I am not a safety expert. You know, I may be an expert in some things, but I'm not an expert about how do we keep our children safe. And, you know, the Office of Homeland Security, the National Association of Police Chiefs recommend that strategy around run, hide, fight. Now, how we talk about it is a different way. And the fight is like a last resort. And hopefully you never have to use it. And I think that's where, you know, you're talking to your kids. I know that, you know, that whole danger stranger, I mean, do people talk to their kids to be careful about, you know, walking off with strangers? You know, yeah, we do. Do we talk about kids not jumping in the car with people? Yeah, we do. Do we talk about kids about other dangers? And it's unfortunate that our society has gotten to a point that we have to do these sorts of trainings. So, you know, I just want to say that I'll continue to listen. But the board wrestled with this. Remember, we talked about the active shooter training, and some of you shared with me your own experiences that were negative, and that we were concerned about the type of videos that are produced out of state, and also that the demographic didn't match our kids. So we thought it was better using our own kids, our own teachers, kids that look like us, right? And so, and a much tamer version of it. I know that doesn't satisfy a lot of people. So, you know, that's where I'm at. I'm just being totally honest about it, and I think that's all I have to say about it right now.
Let's go Secretary Garcia and then Board Member Carrillo.
Madam President, Superintendent, thank you for your honesty and what you just spoke about. In regards to the multitude of safety strategies that the Santa Fe Public Schools puts in place, when I first got here about 2 years ago, Mr. Romero out there had a drill when I was involved in the drill, and I was very impressed of his actions and what he did and how he did for this drill. And now you see the gentleman sitting here in the booth, Mr. Mario, very attentive as into what the superintendent is saying, and his assistant. What individuals out there may not know in the community is the other day we had shelter in place, first week of school, as you said. The superintendent and her staff is actually on that stuff, and we are informed of everything that happens out there very closely with the police department. These 3 gentlemen that actually work our security, people may or may not know about these 3 gentlemen, and sorry to tell them where you guys came from, but these guys are lieutenant sergeants that have actually been in the state police, have actually been within the city of Santa Fe, so they are very well versed, trained in what they do out there. And the superintendent is totally on it, and I appreciate that. So I just want to make that for the record because, like I said, these 3 gentlemen, most ultimate experience than any of us sitting up here will ever do. So just wanted to put that out there for the record because we do have some excellent safety experts on our staff, and thank you for your honesty.
Board Member Carrillo.
I would echo what, you know, Secretary Garcia is saying. However, my recollection this was after Parkland. My recollection is the board at that time when we were talking about safety things in forums and doing a video was that we were going to do age appropriate. So, I mean, I have no trouble with the video for grades, I would say 6 through 12. Because I think there's a big difference between 5th graders and 6th graders. I would think that it needs to be, I don't know if tempered's the right word, but tailored is the right word. Tailored for little kids. And I think that the story that Teresa said about her son and the book, Scary Stories at Night. Is that what? Yeah, I mean, it's like me watching CNN before I go to bed. For God's sakes, man! It's like if you want to have nightmares. But I mean, I could see how our little kids could see the video that we all saw. I imagine over the weekend for the first time too. Their imaginations could run wild with that. So I would be really supportive of the district utilizing the resources we have internally and also with the Sky Center to come up with a video. And it maybe isn't even a video. Maybe they decide, you know something, a video's not the way to do this. Maybe like a little play in the classroom with adult and 3 kids. And maybe it's the Santa Fe High School theater department that works on it with them. Something that, I don't know, is engaging, but really something for the little kids. So that would be my thought on this. And I am not, and Superintendent and I talked about this a lot over the weekend because a number of these schools are my schools, but then I see there really is a cross-section of our community here. And so on that note, I would want us not to characterize different parts of town as having different needs or doing different things with their kids and being open to different things relative to security videos. I think that's a mistake. We're all families. We're all families. We all love our kids. We all want them to be safe, absolutely no matter what. How do we do that? I agree with the superintendent, with Mario, the work that Gabe did. I believe our kids are safer in our schools, in Santa Fe Public Schools, than they could be any place else in the country. They're safe. They just are. The question is, how do we address the little kids? And then the other thing is the opt-out. I would say that I am absolutely, you can't force parents to do things one way or another, but you opt your kid out. That's like saying you opt your kid out of, science because you don't like creation, you don't like the idea of climate change or evolution. Or you're going to opt your kid out of a fire drill, and this is going to be the only kids in the classroom that really have no idea what's going on and where to go, right? It's like, this is a safety thing. I don't think there should be an opt-out. And I would say that for the grades 6, 12 on the video. It's like, this is super important and everyone needs to participate. That would be, I would say, my opinion on that. And I would say also, I'm very accurately reflecting the views of my constituents here. Not just those that are here tonight, but the different calls that I had around the opt-out and around doing something new for the little kids. So, I mean, I just hope Dr. Garcia, you're open to maybe something fun and different and creative for little kids. And I know the intent is completely in the right place because we, as I believe, as Aaron said, it's a different world. And we just have to face it. But we can do so with kindness and gentleness and creativity.
So I frankly am very tired of that we have to talk about this, and personally I spent a huge amount of time and energy over the weekend on this as well. There was a lot of conversation, really thoughtful conversation, I would say, on social media. And I had some incredibly articulate and clear emails, and I really appreciate everybody who has taken the time to write about this and weigh in, because a lot of people have pointed out things that maybe I wouldn't have seen, or angles. The rabbi who you were corresponding with this afternoon. And, in a way, the most important thing to me, and it is an incredibly difficult subject to talk about without being emotional, and I am so beyond frustrated that we have to keep having this conversation, and it's tragic, and it is unacceptable that we don't have solutions outside of our schools that are better than they are for gun violence. And it just seems, and we're seeing the president backing away from anything reasonable to limit the capacity of people to kill other people in a very rapid and awful way. And so, I guess that's the first and foremost thing I want to say is that just my heart is repeatedly broken and like many of us, I think, are just exhausted by this conversation and the emotion that it takes to halt all of this. And Dr. Garcia, I really appreciate how communicative and responsive you have been. I know it's the second week of school, and there's a lot of things going on, and I can't imagine you're sleeping that much, given how many emails you're writing, and so I appreciate that. I also really appreciate this board, and I can't speak to what happened before I came on it, but I have been on it 2.5 years, and we have come miles and miles, even in that time, and I know that a lot of progress was made even before that. And Mr. Salbrides has been, I think, an incredible resource. I believe you were a co-chief at the city of Santa Fe, at the police department, and so, he was the chief of police. And most of all, I think that we need to talk about and remember and lift up and shine a spotlight on the preventative things that are out there, because that's what we did primarily in that study session and with the money from our board. This board made a lot of investments in mental well-being, in bullying prevention, in preventative mechanisms and methods in our schools to reduce the isolation and loneliness that we see leads to this kind of violence. Dr. Garcia has, I'm going to get the name of the committee wrong, but it's like the Equity and Diversity Task Force, because let's face it, a lot of this comes from, at least, let's say the most recent shooting in El Paso, from racism and white nationalism, and it is horrific, and the foundational stuff is so important in our schools, and I think we are doing that. We invested in that. We made that effort. We need to do more and more and more. The Sky Center is an incredible resource. There are others in the community working on being there, reducing isolation, suicide prevention, all of these things that in many ways are really deeply connected. And we can't take action on this tonight, nor am I sure it's appropriate for us to. And Dr. Garcia, I appreciate your candid honesty about still wrestling with this. I don't know how many times you and I talked today or over the weekend, but we kept, I think, trying to find an answer and not coming up with a good answer, because there isn't one. I think, I have come down to agree very substantially with Board Member Carrillo in that, and I am not a mental health expert, I am not a safety expert, I am not any of those things. I am a parent, and I do have an imaginative 8-year-old, and I think there's a thing about that, because we're also not sleeping with a little too much imagination sometimes. And I guess I do think that for younger kids, and I don't know where to draw the line, Board Member Carrillo draws it himself, but I do think that for the younger kids, maybe we should rethink this, and I appreciate your openness and willingness to do that. And I do think that, and I appreciate the effort, and we went down this road to produce our own video. I shared my stories about how my staff at the city of Santa Fe was traumatized, frankly, by a run, hide, fight video, and I spent 2 days. And I am not a counselor or have any training in that, but I spent 2 days talking to my 12 members of staff who were really upset by what they'd seen, and these were adults, and to where it put them in a mental place. And I just stopped everything, all of the work, all of the things that seemed really urgent, and sat with everybody who walked into my office and said, so I watched that video, because it had just been shared with us in an email, and everybody watched it on their own time. And Board Member Carrillo, I also appreciate that maybe it's not a video, because I'm with you. And I do think that, and what ended up resonating with me, again, with the incredible number of thoughtful comments on parent threads on social media was that it should be integrated with mental wellness and with behavioral health expertise, and even trying to, think about, I don't know how this would work, but how we weave in the prevention and, I think, and have the questions, and that it's all basically carefully managed, particularly for our littler ones, because a kindergartner is very different from a 6th grader, who was quite different from a 12th grader or something like that. So, we don't have any good answers. I appreciate your active wrestling with this, and I appreciate many of the points raised tonight, including that, we need an integrated approach with mental health, and that we really need to not fall into some parents versus others, which is, it does seem easy to do, and I appreciate your words on that, Board Member Carrillo, just because the realities of where our lockdowns happen are striking in terms of the geography of this city. And it seems that we are looking at not an if we need this training, because on some level, we are here as a society, and so it's not it doesn't seem to me it's a question of if. We do need something, but it's how, and there has been a lot of thoughtfulness on that, and I guess I would ask, I'm sure, in fact, that you will update all of us in the community very well as this evolves, and that just a plug that we need to keep doing this work as a community. I would really love to see us work on, and this is always the thing, but how this community really wraps and supports our schools. I would like to see, as Secretary Garcia often says, the city and the county and the schools working together on this. I want to see how we can make our schools safer as a community. I want us as the school district not just to be on our own with this. I want us to ask our other elected leaders at the city and the county to figure this out with us, to engage actively and figure out how we can make our schools safer, because this shouldn't just be something that we wrestle with, and we need to keep building the foundation and preventing the root causes of this and treating the disease, and unfortunately we do also have to treat the symptoms. So thank you. It's a lot of energy, and I appreciate that. And thank you all for coming and speaking this, and to everybody who has emailed and engaged on this. I really do appreciate the dialogue. Board Member Carrillo.
Just very quickly, I want to echo what you said, thanking the superintendent. I think you responded to every email that was sent to me that was copied to you, that you responded to everyone, so I just want to thank you for doing that.
Absolutely, and we always talk about keeping the public in public education. And we're not a private school where we just say, well, you pay your tuition and this is the way it is. We are a public school. We do want to be responsive. And as I said to many parents, I want to be responsive to all of our parents. And I think that you've all made some really good points. We have tremendous expertise on staff as well as community partners. And we will regroup as a cabinet and take a look at this. But I feel that I've gotten enough input to have a sense of how, like you said, it's not a matter of do we do it. And I like the idea, I appreciate Board Member Carrillo that, and I say this all the time, we're not a system of schools, we're a school system. And because I did think about that, well, should we have certain schools be able to do certain things? And that doesn't make sense either. We really do need a uniform approach, and we really been, our mobility rate, what did we say, was 28% of how much our kids move around? And so we really do want to have a unified approach, and I think we're all reasonable people. And so we will work forward with this, and then we will work with our cabinet and our professionals, and then I will come back and let you know where we're going and communicate with our parents. So thank you, everyone.
Vice President Price.
I've been with the Santa Fe Public Schools since 1989 as a teacher, as an assistant principal, as a principal, and as a board member. We have come a long, long way. As a teacher, I don't want you to think that any of this is new. It's more intense. Clearly, we have to get an assault weapon ban back in place. However, as a teacher in 1989, I took a gun from a student in the cafeteria. As an assistant principal under Steve Dilch, the two of us, it was reported that a man had walked onto the West Campus with a gun, and Steve and I went looking for this person. We have come a long way from that. Had to deal with rifle in the back of a truck, taking away knives. This is not one of the things I learned from my experience is how to not panic, how to deal with, and not to be overcome by the fear. I am very proud of the work that we have done as a board to make this a very safe as we possibly can, school district. In fact, I had a gun pulled on me by a parent in my office when I was an assistant principal. I had to talk him out of it. My secretary was just terrified. But then again, I was born and raised in New York City. So I can talk a knife out of your hand, I can talk a gun out of your hand, and then shake later. Don't shake now. In terms of opting out, we do have parents who opt out. This is not a new concept, Board Member Carrillo. There are parents who opt out for religious reasons, for certain things, you know, and so it's not as traumatizing as you may, or as you may think it could be to the child. The child probably doesn't want to opt out, but you as a parent have that option, of course, right? We have people who opt out when evolution is taught. They go to the library. So this is not new, opting out. I don't know if that's, excuse me? Yeah. I just don't, well, we have Jehovah's Witnesses who opt out of certain things, and their kids go to the library. That's the parent's decision, okay? So I don't want us to give in to fear, but I want us to be prepared. And how we do that, I don't know. But we need to work on it. I never thought we would be where we are today. And it breaks my heart. Breaks my heart. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're going to move on from that item. And you were concluded your announcements.
I'm sorry, yes, I've concluded my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to those of you that came.
On the consent agenda, anyone want to pull anything off of the consent agenda? Do we need to pull minutes? Yes, Secretary Garcia, and then Board Member Fedillo.
Madam Chair, just for staff, is Capitol High School going to get rid of the grass and we're actually going to put turf on the baseball fields?
You're talking about E?
Yes.
So are you going to pull E off?
Well, I just have a quick question.
Or you want a quick question,
Answer, yes.
Madam President? Is that all right?
That's looks like the way I'm reading the bid documents.
Deputy Superintendent Wagner.
Board President Noble, Board Member Superintendent Garcia, the contract is to replace the grass fields with a multi-complex for baseball, softball, and a practice field.
So, Madam, I was getting confused with Madam Chair, Madam President. Christy, so we're going to have the girls' softball field redone as well as the boys' baseball field, or just they're both going to be one now?
Board President Noble, Board Members, Superintendent Garcia, it will be a multi-use complex. So one field will be abandoned in place and the other field adjacent to the roadway will become the multi-use complex. And it will be all artificial turf. We'll be eliminating a very large water expense for the district and bringing that up to standard with our other athletic fields.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Board Member Carrillo, then Vice President Bryce.
So I was, okay, first I'm going to make a motion to pass, and then we'll, a motion to pass the consent, and then
Second.
after the second, I have something to say.
Second.
And then I just wanted to point out on contracts over 50, to Capitol High School again, it's a $3 million contract. Be surprised how much turf and resurfacing and everything costs. But it's a really big deal that we're redoing a lot of the athletic complex over there. So thanking the voters of Santa Fe for approving bonds and allowing this to happen. And on one, and being facetious, I would say, like, because somebody's like thinking, somebody probably out there is thinking, well, what's going to happen to all the prairie dogs? To which I say, I really don't care. But because they cause a lot of broken ankles, believe me, a lot of broken ankles in grass fields and prairie dogs. So I'm glad that we're going to lose the vote of all those prairie doggers. So I'm very glad that we're working on this project.
Vice President Price.
Yes, I was unable to attend the study session, so I can't vote on that one. Okay.
I was going to ask for guidance on that. We had, it says not present were, and this is correct because I was there, not present were Vice President Lorraine Price and Secretary Rudy Garcia, which means that if we follow the convention of not voting on the minutes where we weren't present, we don't have enough votes to pass that. So do we need to postpone this item?
I'm going to defer to our general counsel.
Well, we had, didn't we have quorums without even those that weren't there? I mean, there were people, we can vote on each of these separately, right?
We can certainly vote on it separately, but if we have 2 abstentions on that particular item,
right.
So we could bring it
we
back,
might
I
need
would
to just do
think.
it next time.
That's what I was
It's
at.
just- yeah.
It looks like he's saying yes.
It does look like he's saying yes.
So just do all the minutes next time?
No, we just the August 13th
Okay.
next time. So we will be pulling off item F2, August 13th study session minutes, and we will be voting on the approval of the August 6th minutes. So we'll need to bring the August 13th minutes back.
And I have one more contract question. So regarding communities and schools, 400,000, I thought our annual was 450 or 500. Why is this 400?
Mr. Board Member Carrillo, I'm not certain, but that must have been the size of the contract. I don't know. I know that it was 250, and then I think an additional 2.
Well, I think we started at, yeah, so that was 450. Because I thought it was at least 450.
So if it doesn't get approved today, then we can't move forward. So I would approve it, and then we can go back
We'll go
and
back
look
for
at
50
that.
more if we need to.
Yes,
All right.
but I'm pretty sure that was what was negotiated on the contract based on the services provided. And
All
I
right, that's
can't
fine.
tell you why, but I would, and Sue O'Brien isn't here today, but I can get you that answer, but I would recommend you approve it because they need
Yeah,
to,
definitely. All right.
we need to get moving with it.
Great.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I think the amended motion officially was to remove August 13th
We
minutes.
accept that, yeah.
And that's acceptable to the maker, the second, Secretary Garcia. Okay, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda without item F2, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, item 10, action. The second reading and approval of a new policy, 547, testing drinking water at schools. Speaking of safety, I'm very pleased to see this.
Madam
Any-
President.
Yes.
Madam President, members of the board, I'd like to ask for our Executive Director of Operations, Mr. Gabe Romero.
Well, given that it's a second reading, I just make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Because there's no changes in it.
There are changes.
I
It was
don't
what
see
you,
any X out.
or
I was
what
looking at
board
the wrong
member
page.
Cashman.
I'm sorry, the one line.
So just for the sake of transparency,
All
Mr.
right.
Romero, if you would go ahead. Please.
Thank you, President Noble.
Hold on a second. Procedurally, I made a motion, and we can always go for discussion, but there needs to be a second. All right.
Secretary Garcia seconded that. Okay, Mr. Romero, thank you.
Other board members, superintendent, there was a request that we include language that would require the testing results to be made public. That is on line number 6 and number 7, which states the results from the water testing for each school site and district facility shall be made available to the public. And the only other request is that we number the lines so that we know where we're directing our comments towards, and that's done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Romero. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board.
On to item B, the authorization Monte del Sol. Dr. Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. And I have a handout for you. 3, 4. Based on an inquiry from Monte del Sol Charter School, the superintendent requested a review of the school to determine if it is suitable to become a Santa Fe Public Schools district charter. A team conducted a review of Monte del Sol Charter School and has a recommendation. Mr. Gabriel Romero headed that team, and Mr. Romero may give you some highlights of the team, who the team members were, and the areas that were reviewed, and then we'll conclude with our recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Romero.
Thank you, Superintendent Garcia. President Noble, board members. On or about June of 2019, the superintendent had requested that we provide a review of Monte del Sol in order to determine its suitability to become a district charter. The Monte del Sol Charter School is currently a state charter. We assembled a team of department leaders, which included Peter McWayne in charge of curriculum and academics, Herman Martinez in charge of financial and business services, Julie Lucero in charge of special ed, and myself for operations. Over a time period of about a little over a month and a half, we requested documents from Monte del Sol. We met with the leadership at Monte del Sol and reviewed the documents that were provided for us. The condensed time frame and the window that we had did not allow for an intensive review, and it was our understanding from Monte del Sol that they wanted an indication from the board whether they would be considered. So with that, we did conduct research and made some recommendations for the board. If I may, I can go ahead and go over those recommendations, and department by department, I'll cover those very briefly in a summary. So, reading from a report I provided earlier, I think the team values the opportunity to have an additional school come into the district with Santa Fe Public Schools, but we have to weigh that against the resources of the district. One of the issues that came from the financial and business services end was that the controls were not fully developed and the school lacked a succession planning. Academically, Monte del Sol, student achievement has been in decline has been in decline, and the school lacks a clear systemic and strategic plan to improve student achievement. Regarding special education, there was no real determination made, as it did not provide enough information to really make that determination, so that was somewhat neutral. And then operationally, we did find that the school is a relatively new school. It's relatively well maintained, but it does have some issues that were of concern operationally. The first had to do with the security of the school. Perimeter fencing was non-existent. The school's office is within the school itself, so entering the school from many different locations is not a problem. And accessing the front office, you have to go into the school, so managing visitor access is troublesome. And also with the capital funding for for the school itself, it's lacking a few basic facilities which weren't built with the school. The school is not, I think it was built in the early 2000s, and it did not come built with a gymnasium, a practice field, or a library. So those types of facilities we would need to invest capital funding in to bring them up to district standards, and that's what I was explaining with the security aspect of it, is that because of some of the security issues of the school, it would need to be brought up to district standards if it was brought into the district as a district charter. For these reasons, the review team recommends against Monte del Sol becoming.
Can I clarify?
Yes.
Those are very general reasons. The report has, I mean, because I know that Dylan, I want to give you a copy of this because I think it gives the impression that the two things you mentioned in finance and whatnot, that for those reasons we're not approving. So they do have the full report. Those were the sort of overview, but there's much more detail. And so based on the detailed report, correct? We're not recommending approval. Is that where we're going?
Superintendent Garcia, board members, board president, there was, you have with you a longer version of that, which is about a 5-page report that, again, does summarize the findings of the team. And I was just reading from the summary, the last page, to give you an idea for the reasons why the team felt that they were not suitable.
Board Member Carrillo.
It's almost like saying, this child's really nice and everything, but he's not suitable for adoption. So here's my philosophy on this. One, I don't think we should take a vote tonight. I think we should table, but I'll see how the others feel. Okay, there are definitely challenges, and I remember addressing challenges that I had relative to the grades there, the proficiency and everything else. And even though on page 4, our report shows, 68% increase here, 61, but, 68% of, or 2 people of 60, it's what you can do with percentages and numbers. To me, it's like of no consequence in many cases. Also, on page 3, where it says previously an A, then a C, then a D, it's like on one hand, we love to, now I personally think the grading system, the A to F, is malarkey all the way around. But we love to say it's really good when we get an A or a B, right? But when we get a D or an F, then it's a really terrible system. So we also know that there can be many reasons why these grades declined. It could be, oh yeah, 2 kids didn't take part that day. We know that that could be that's something that could make that grade decline. We as a board know that. And so, I mean, there's that. Also, page 3, the first bullet, lack of qualified math teachers. For God's sakes, man, we have one school that needs 4 math teachers. So we're all in the same kit and caboodle here. So what I would really like us to do is remember, and nobody on it, no, Maureen wasn't even here. When we voted to keep ATC as a district charter, that was a school that was going down the tubes in every way when I came on the board in 2011. And they couldn't manage their books, they couldn't manage their staff, the property needed a bunch of work. I mean, there was every reason for us to say, you know something, it was a nice experiment and it didn't work, but we didn't, okay? Now it's consistently in the U.S. News and World Report is one of the top 100 charter schools in the country, and it's consistently rated one of the top 4 schools in New Mexico because we believed in them, okay? So there's that piece, right? And that's why the Phoenix is their mascot. I mean, if anything rose from the ashes, from the flames to become something just incredibly excellent, it's ATC. So relative to Monte, I don't know personally enough about their program and why they're their own charter. So we hear that one school's experiential this and touchy-feely that, and we know that with ATC, technology in the classics, and there really is this emphasis on academics, and there really is a lot of rigor there. So, and I said this the last time the Monte people are here, I would like to see the same kind of academic strategic plan for Monte that we just saw 2 weeks ago. All the Tuesdays blend, last Tuesday, because that was a brilliant presentation. And if I would like to see Monte come up with that kind of plan, or if they were going to be part of Santa Fe Public Schools, then they're going to be part of that plan, where they can then have student results and evaluations in real-time data, right? We can then give them the tools that we have to be the Phoenix, okay? And where I started off saying, that's like saying that's a really nice kid, but we're not eligible for adoption. These are all our kids, okay? I personally believe that the kids at Desert are our kids. The kids at Prep are our kids, and at St. Mike's. And if something's going awry in any of those places, these are our kids. You spoke earlier, Ms. Noble, about wanting us all to come together, right, relative to safety. Well, we need to always come together around our kids. And the Monte kids are our kids. And I think we need to do the right thing, and that is pick them up by the bootstraps, give them the tools that they need, give their staff any professional development that they may need, and let them come in and especially experience what, can't remember his name, I'm sorry, our Chief Assessment Officer, who we just brought on. That presentation and these tools that we developed that give me actually, a great deal of confidence in this coming year for our district. Let's give those tools to Monte. So I don't want us to make a decision on this tonight. I want us to go back to the drawing board on this, and maybe there's a working group that the superintendent establishes with the group at Monte to make this, that's what working groups are for, right? To make this work. Those are my thoughts. And I'm sticking to them.
Madam President?
Dr. Garcia.
I do want to go over the financial pieces. And every staff member looks at this differently, in terms of when they did the review. And I agree about what you said about the grades. That's not the issue to me. Whatever academic program they have and the parents choose to go there and it works for them, I think that's fine. I think it is of interest to know from them what they want in capital, because that will be an issue that will come to the district. And I think it's wonderful to say that we can provide them the support to get them where we would like them to be in certain things, but I don't know that we have the capacity to do that. But my biggest concern, quite frankly, that was somewhat softballed, I think that you got in the summary, and Mr. Martinez is there, but I'm just going to hit it and then he can answer those questions. Financial resource needed for capital outlay are not defined in the financial statements. Not a biggie, you could overcome that. But audited financials are not available for fiscal year 2019. Management of operations indicates a lack of oversight and sufficient competency for maintaining internal controls for 2018. Material weaknesses include the inability to complete proper bank recs and mitigate potential risks related to cash at the end of the year. Findings indicate a lack of controls on cash receipts deposits within a 24-hour period. Purchasing procedures, accrued payroll, and contact disbursements for transportation. Fiscal year 2019, the school has contracted for a business manager. However, lack of internal oversight on procedures may be a risk unless proper segregation of duties and technical skills are available in the succession plan. Budget and planning were developed internally for 1920. The budget time and an outline reflect a lack of sufficient input from stakeholders. Consolidated budget report was provided, which did not provide a clear indication of management of budgeting procedures. Copies of financial statements for the Charters Foundation indicate an athletic account. Funds for athletics is considered a proprietary account that is under the purview of the charter school. It's unclear whether these funds are used for athletic activity that coincides with the function of the charter. Further, it's not defined in operational policies or procedures if fundraising activities occurring through the foundation are in compliance. Financial resources have improved over the last fiscal years. However, internal controls do not appear fully developed. And then they go on to show their financial situation. Why is this a big deal? Because their audit will be our audit. and we'll get dinged on that. And so that is the major concern, and I'm gonna ask Mr. Martinez, we're still rebuilding. We've just, I did get to announce, but Richard Helford is going on to be the CFO in Espanola. And it's a great opportunity for him, and we'll thank him. And we had a nice conversation, and, we love Richard and Richard loves us, but it was an opportunity that was made to him that we couldn't compete with.
Oh my God.
And so, we're in the process, as you well know, of rebuilding our own financial shop. And so can we really take on some, a charter that has this? And Mr. Martinez, can you want to just comment a summary of what I've just stated and our ability to take this on? I just want you to be aware of that.
No, I wanted to actually, and I did read this as it was passed out, and I'd like, before Mr. Martinez speaks, this is exactly where we were with ATC in 2011. Okay, it really was. You can go back to the record and see. And and I'm not trying to I'm not being contrary for the sake of being contrary, but I mean, you could ask Barbara Goodwin, Frank Montano, and Glenn and Linda, and it was unanimous that we would save ATC, and they made just a lot of mistakes. Okay, and perhaps this is what's happened when Monte never left the district. And a lot of people leave because they think, ugh, who needs that oversight? But sometimes it's as you're being at home than it is being away, and that's why often schools leave a district to be their own charters. But we were exactly here with ATC. And in terms of having the resources, sometimes if you take that adopted kid, yeah, it means that nobody gets to have that second trip to the mall for new clothes, that week. That we're all going to pitch in to make something happen. We had more than 13,000 kids at that point in our district, okay? As opposed to the 11,600 that was reported today that maybe end up being like 12,003. It was like 13,500, almost 14,000 at that time. We had Turquoise Trail at that time was one of our schools. So we were still able to save ATC. So I'm not ready to make a motion yet. I'd like to see what other board members think in terms of tabling, and I hear you, Dr. Garcia, and I wish I'd had this actually before the meeting, but I've read this, and you're right. It could end up creating challenges for our district, but when is our district ever been afraid of meeting challenges, especially when we're putting kids first?
Secretary Garcia, do you want to go, or can we
I'd
hear
just
from
actually
Mr.
like to,
Martinez?
the adopted kid analogies kind of, I understand where you're going with it. I definitely think individuals, myself, need a second chance, third chance, sometimes fourth chance, especially when it's a child. And I would just like to see if the Monte del Sol charter will actually work with the district and get some of these answers and questions resolved with our district, with the Santa Fe Public School Districts, before we even move forward on this. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to table this item.
I would second the motion to table, but I would also ask Dr. Garcia and Ms. to say whatever it is they feels necessary to tell us.
I do believe that's my role, and I've been trying to do that. Mr. Martinez.
Board President Noble, board members, and Superintendent Dr. Garcia. Just a little bit of my background. I worked with charter schools for the first part of my career, working under the New Mexico Coalition for Charter Schools. And if I recall correctly, and I don't know if I can cite the right statistic in terms of the percentage of charter schools, but it was well over 70% as far as charter schools that were closed due to financial constraints or financial mismanagement. I will, having worked with some of those charter schools that were closed and identifying some of those weaknesses or material weaknesses that they had within their financial procedures, this is, I think, indicative of some of those potential areas of weakness that could potentially come as a liability within the financial statements. I don't, obviously this is a 30,000 foot view. It's not a comprehensive evaluation of every one of their procedures within the charter school. But some of the areas that I think are just technically in terms of what should be completed, I think it well indicates that everything from cash receipts that are being deposited to actual reporting of employee contributions. Those items, I think, are just general items that should be processed on a regular basis within, a week or 2 weeks. And so those are items that I would anticipate that if there was any separation between the contractor and the charter school, would essentially automatically become material weaknesses for the charter school itself. Again, this is, I think, indicative of some of those potential areas of weakness, knowing that the charter school is still, I think, developing some of those within the contractor itself. I think there still needs to be some development within the function of the charter school in terms of having an individual, an employee on staff, but also knowing that there are other contractors like the Michael V. Hill Group or other groups that potentially do provide these types of services, that they are well equipped to develop these charter schools and to assist them in maintaining their financials. I think for business services within Santa Fe Public Schools, we definitely have an interest in terms of supporting financial services or those types of functions within other areas within our district. But I think our reach is also limited in terms of what we can do or what we can support within Santa Fe Public Schools. I think just in the general conversation with the leadership of Monte del Sol, there has been some general openness in terms of what was provided, but I think there were also some items that were well garnished and were not provided just for lack of transparency and knowing that there may have been some other areas that were not identified or could not be identified through what was provided.
Thank you very much. Board Member Carrillo.
First, I cannot reiterate enough, this is exactly where we were in 2011. And
I think we've heard that.
That's why I said the word reiterated. And that I honestly feel it is our ethical responsibility to do what we can for this school and these kids, the same way I felt in 2011. The thing that was mentioned relative to capital expenditures, let's remember that when ATC, when we saved ATC, it was 2011, they didn't get their gym and cafeteria and stuff until 2019. They knew full well that, look, you're going to be waiting a good long time for these things because there is a needs list, and you are now at the bottom of it. So unless it has to do with safety, right? So with regards to what Mr. Romero said, absolutely, there's going to need to be some way to contain the campus to make it safer, and that's going to come from capital. But I would just really, there is a vote to table. I hope that it passes, and I hope that, and maybe this happens in another direction during board discussion, maybe in 2 weeks. I'm going to make a note to myself that there can be direction to the board, to the super and staff to work with this group to make it work, because it can work. So anyway, there is a motion to table, and I'm not sure what Robert's rule says about all that, but like I think there's a rule that says if somebody's got a motion to table, it's if there's a second, it's practical. There's a little sheet over there that says, because we so rarely table. So I'm honestly, do you?
I mean, I can read the sheet if you really want to, but I believe we vote on a motion.
Well, we vote on it, but I think it almost has to be voted on like right away, as opposed to. There's a procedural
sure
thing.
That there is some discretion there.
All right.
And given that, frankly, you have continued the discussion a few times.
Well, because the
I'd
capital
like
thing, I wanted to bring up the capital thing, and
I
I saw Ms. Price nod her head saying, yeah, it took them 8 years to get their stuff.
Okay. There's been a motion and a second, and I am sure that Board Member Cashman would want to vote on this. And I don't know if we have shared this and if we shared it in advance with the folks at Monte del Sol. But as we are very careful to, and I have served on the audit committee now for 2.5 years, and I think I attend a majority of the meetings, though sometimes they are tough to get to. I think one of the things that we have gone through is certainly answering findings or any material weaknesses, that sort of thing, in our audits. And I do think we should give the Monte del Sol team that opportunity. Having said that, this is, the board has 3 duties, and fiscal management is one of them. And this is pretty serious stuff. And I take Mr. Martinez's ratios very seriously, and I appreciate what you're saying about ATC. But this is serious stuff. And, some of these issues here, having seen a lot of financial issues be worked through at the City of Santa Fe and the schools, this is the kind of thing that can torpedo a large institution and can suck you into a whirlpool if it's not minded. And I am so grateful. I'm very sad to hear about Richard leaving. Is he still here? He's gone? Anyway, yeah, well, thank him. But he has worked so hard to steer us since, he stepped into the role as acting CFO. And, honestly, I have learned a huge amount on the audit committee and really appreciated how diligently this staff has worked with our auditors to, and it's taken years. It's taken, the 2.5 years that I've seen to really get a bunch of this stuff in order. And, again, given that this is one of our 3 core duties, it scares me. It scares me, some of the things that I'm reading here. And I thought, I don't know if it's worth, I don't think it's worth going back to the record, but I thought that we had actually asked that there be some sort of schedule of what capital requests would look like before. And, what we have now, and again, I don't know how this has worked, but is Mr. Romero has done an estimate that's about $16 million to complete the campus master plan. I don't know if we have any schedule or thoughts around that, but that is something, again, our bond funding is, it is for the whole community. And I do think, that's something that we need to be thinking about. So, I do feel that the whole board, frankly, needs to be here for this decision. So I am in favor of tabling this, especially in Board Member Cashman's absence. And I think that working with Monte del Sol, there's a broad range as to how that works. I'm not sure we do have the resources and capacity to do some of the things that were suggested, including the professional development and active working group and this sort of thing. I know there's been a lot of sleep lost around the audit committee and some of what's gone on there. Anyway, it's this is sobering stuff, and I think we need to think about how we work on this, if we're going to work on this. But I guess it's pretty clear what we'll do tonight, and we can bring it back. So, motion to table and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
So, I think that's pretty clear. 3 in favor, 1 against the motion to table. The motion passes. Thank you. Board Member Carrillo.
A little food for thought to go on. Wasn't that long ago where we were thinking that there was going to be the possibility of having Turquoise Trail come back into our fold, right? as not a charter, but one of our schools perhaps, would that not have been the same thing in terms of resources than going to another elementary school? Or if they decide, yeah, so, you know, there you go. Not trying to get the last word, but there was just that thought around, what would we do? Would we say, okay, you're out of luck? You can be part of Sandoval County or something? No, we'd never do that.
Well, I mean, it doesn't mean that they would close. I think part of the reason that they like a decision and will postpone to the next time is that they would go to the PEC for authorization. That doesn't mean they would close.
Moving on, we're going to the 2019-2020 Board Committee Appointment. Board Secretary Rudy Garcia.
Madam Assistant Board President, Vice President, I actually have, I believe, a Ron Baca, who I'm going to submit for the Audit Committee nomination, and I'll get his, Ron Baca. He's actually a former financial individual from the New Mexico Department of Transportation. But I will get him the information to the superintendent and the Citizens Review Committee nomination. I have yet to get in contact with the existing individual educator who works for Capitol High School, who is Marty, so I haven't talked to Marty yet, but I will this week.
Thank you. Moving on to board discussion and possible action. School safety proposal. Board Member Carrillo.
Okay, I'm excited about this one.
Supplies.
School supplies,
sorry,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I've got safety on my mind.
I'm excited about this one. You don't have to get up yet, but if, this is sitting in the audience is Mr. Floyd Carvajal. He's the general manager of the Office Depot on Cerrillos Road and can be a resource if we need to call on him. So you'll recall that over the last several meetings since the beginning of school that week, that I brought up how disconcerting it is. Well, on one hand, it's really good, but on the other, disconcerting that we're hearing that all of these people out there, that basically our school district is a bunch of beggars, that all these people out there, you know, they're on radio, that CIS, everyone's raising money for school supplies for our teachers because we can't afford to do it and the state doesn't give us money. And I mean, I just get tired of that because we're the district and we should be supplying our teachers with what they need, right? And I'm glad that community comes forward to do a lot of different things. But I also think that at one point, you know, the parent needs to feed their kids. Okay, it's incumbent upon us. And so in 2014, you were here. Yeah, it's just hard to keep track. You and Maureen were here. In 2014, the district basically, and I believe it was 900 was the number 2 of teachers, we basically gave every teacher $200 for school supplies. And we did it in a way that did not violate the anti-donation clause. And the way and the teachers, by the way, were extremely happy about that. And the way we did that was by having a contract with Staples. And there was the one Staples in town. There's no more Staples here. Mm-hmm. And then basically the teachers went in with like a driver's license, but also their ID to show that they were authorized to spend $200 down on the account. So essentially it was because I spoke with Joel, obviously, and Latifa because they helped it. I spoke with somebody down in Albuquerque who was on a finance team here at the time to see how did we do this? I mean, it's like, because it was just, not that 5 years ago was that long ago, but I couldn't remember. And they said what we did is we took out a contract, and it was a sole source contract with Staples for X amount of dollars based on the number of teachers times 200. And that was that. And then Staples managed the account. And so what I'm proposing tonight, and which is why Mr. Carvajal is here, is that we do the same thing with Office Depot. And we have 2 Office Depots in town. As you know, Office Depot and Office Max are one, so those Office Max locations closed. And, but given the technology today, we can also monitor, you know, what the teachers are purchasing. Because I think you guys would agree, we don't want them purchasing reams of paper or toner or anything that they need to be requisitioning through their principal from the district. No, even if they're behind on their recs, or if we're behind on completing the recs, then that's another issue. We also probably don't want them purchasing consumables like Gatorade and nuts and those big tins of pretzels, okay? And I think that the public's perception is that maybe Office Depot is an office supply store, but you'd be surprised how many things that teachers use on a regular basis, even relative to arts and crafts, are at Office Depot. You'd also be incredibly surprised, as I learned in meeting with Mr. Carvajal and also their regional sales manager, all of the different things they do that we can then make our teachers and our principals aware of, these rebate programs they have to pump money back into our schools. And even if all of us were to shop at an Office Depot like right after work and pick up a ton of stuff, we can say, you know something? We'd like the 5% rebate to go to Salazar. We'd like our 5% rebate to go to Cesar Chavez or Sequia Madre or wherever. But anyway, so that's what the proposal is. The proposal is, and then I want to talk to you because I had a really great meeting with the superintendent. My original plan was $300. And obviously, and that's based in my having spoken with over the first week of school when I visit all my elementary schools, asking teachers, how much do you typically put out a year in school supplies? And universally, it was like $300 to $500 is what they said of their own money. And, you know, that's going to be over and above what CIS and what the radio stations and everything bring in. And you were, I mean, I can't even imagine even back then, you know, what you spent in your... In the old days. There you go. In the olden days, or the golden days, what you spent. So in meeting with the superintendent, she had a really great idea, not necessarily to do $300 now. Keep it at $200 now. At the end of maybe this semester, doing a survey with teachers, did you get those things you need, or were there things you couldn't find, or how can we better this program? Because then we were talking about, I mean, if it's mostly arts and crafts that maybe weren't available at Office Depot, then maybe there's a contract that we also take out with like Michael's. Part of me was going to say Hobby Lobby, but I don't think they align. I don't think they align very well with our board, just to say it that way. But a place like Michael's, where you can get your arts and crafts supplies, you know, there. So anyway, I would like us, and the reason I changed it from just board discussion, or the reason I changed it from just school supplies to school supply proposal was so the four of us could decide to do this tonight and just have the superintendent move forward on it as she sees best fit with the general manager who's here tonight to field any questions. So there you have it, $180,000. Oh, there's more. Where would this money come from? Cash. And we just have this limited bucket of cash. No, we don't, and I know that we don't. And I thought of everything that Maureen would say in advance of this, and so I did my homework. So I called RBC Capital Markets, and I spoke with Eric Harrigan, right? So you all remember Eric, the really tall gentleman who comes and talks to us on all the bond issues. And I asked him, I said, Eric, if we were to take $180,000, Ms. Noble, you hear what I know you guys are talking, but this is an important piece. I was talking about the piece of this coming from cash and my having spoke with Eric Harrigan, and that he said, no, this would not affect bond rating. He said, if we were regularly taking like $200,000 out 3 times a year, or $500,000 out twice a year, that would end up being a red flag. But $180,000 once? He said no. And he said, and actually the only people that would even be concerned with that would be Moody's, and Moody's is not something that is really as valid as it used to be when we're going out for bond ratings and bonds. So I tried to do as much homework as I could, and if you have any questions for Dr. Garcia about our conversation, I thought the survey was a great idea. You know, I'd still love to do 300 if you all wanted to approve 300, but Dr. Garcia's suggestion was 2, and then Mr. Carvajal is here for any questions should you have them. Well, I'll make a motion. I would make first I'm going to start at 300 because I think there's no such thing as being too generous with our teachers. So I would make a motion that we establish a school supplies account with Office Depot as is worked out by the superintendent to be for our teachers at $300 per teacher. There.
I'll second for discussion.
Do you want to discuss?
Just really quick, Superintendent, is that correct that Board Member Correa did talk with you, and we do have the cash reserves, and we're okay with I don't know if I'm okay with the 300, but we're okay with the 200 possibly?
So we talked about the dollar amount. My suggestion was if we were going to consider that, to look at a lesser amount, which was $180,000. However, I did mention to him I had not talked to Herman Martinez about if he had any concerns. So, I would check with that. And then we did talk about procurement and whether or not that could be a sole source or whether there were other firms, right, that could do that or had a cash back proposition. So, those are, I think, procurement would be one issue. But I would ask Mr. Martinez your sense about the 180.
And the motion on the table is for more than 180.
I'm sorry, 300.
No, I'm happy to do 180, but I asked for
how
what I
much
want,
is
and
300?
I'll settle for 180.
300. Well, 300.
If we did
Would be
300.
270.
270. Okay.
And that's rough numbers based on
Yeah.
like 900 teachers.
So, also really quick, why the second to my motion is just, I remember when Board Member Angelica Ruiz was actually, had 3 or 4 or 5 kids in the district, and they were actually asking her to purchase different types of supplies for 3 or 4 kids that were in different schools throughout the district. And she kind of had a little bit of a challenge with it because, which I believe I feel she was right, as into, I understand there's 2nd graders, 5th graders, 9th graders, 12th graders, but if we could just have some sort of a standardized list of A through J, K, and F, and that they needed to buy, because as Board Member Carrillo brought up, or somebody from the audience brought up, the last meeting is in regards to bringing some sort of what was it? Yeah, earphones or headphones, and I was like, what's this about? But anyhow, so that's one of the reasons why I second the motion, is because I can remember when Board Member Angelica Ruiz actually brought that forward, probably 10 years ago, 7 years ago.
Mr. Martinez, if you'd like to weigh in, please.
Board President Noble, board members, Superintendent Dr. Garcia, for the past 2 years, the New Mexico Public Education Department provided $100 cards, or essentially purchasing authority through a third-party vendor, and Santa Fe Public Schools did participate in that for the past 2 years, as I'm familiar with, and as Board Member Carrillo had indicated, there was another initiative in addition in prior fiscal years that provided $200. In terms of the cash balance itself, we haven't finalized, obviously, the audit. There is some items that still need to get either reclassified or adjusted in terms of the cash balance itself. We are sitting a little healthier, I think, than what we had estimated at the 5%. I think in terms of what we can provide to teachers, I don't know if it would be better to do it in a 2-prong approach, where we provide a certain amount for the first semester and then a certain amount for the second semester. Once we did have the audited financials, which we would be able to identify the specific amount for the teacher supply cards. In terms of the procurement authority, we did go through the vendor that provided essentially a purchasing agreement, which allowed for teachers to purchase up to $200 under the district's purchasing authority, and so it wasn't a violation of the procurement code or any other violation of regulations, and so that would be an option as well for the district.
Thank you. And then also just in regards to, talked with a couple of teachers from my side of the district, and which is kind of find it hard, and she kind of found it hard is whenever a student goes to school for the first day, one of the things you take to school is a piece of paper and a pencil. And unfortunately, there's parents out there that can't go find a piece of paper or can't go find a pen to send their kid to school with. And I find that very unfortunate that, come on, can you go find a piece of paper and go find a pencil so you can send your kid to school, or is the kid actually opting out not to take a pencil and a piece of paper to school, because it's not rocket science to go get a piece of paper and get a tablet that's 79 cents and a pack of pencils to go to school. So I see it from both angles and both ways, and so I just wanted to make that for the record. Thank you.
Vice President Price.
Will this drop us below the 5%?
This specifically for the 300,000 is what the question, sorry. Or what amount are we, what threshold were we just?
180, we'll say.
The 180 would not drop us below the 5%.
Then I would like to ask if we could do a friendly amendment and go from.
The answer is yes.
Drop from the 300. You know how I get about.
No, I understand.
Queasy
No,
about
I
dropping below
absolutely.
5%.
And if Maureen was here, that's the very same thing she'd be saying. We are so good with our cash and our bond, and we're so responsible. Agree completely. I'm sorry.
Is that friendly to the second?
Yes, and I'd also like to see if the maker of the motion would actually like to be in agreement that whatever the CEO as well as the superintendent suggests that we do, maybe if it's half for half a semester and half the second semester, whatever the superintendent would actually like to propose, I'd be okay with that. Because what I don't want to happen is somebody go and spend $200 tomorrow, and then comes March, well, we don't have any more supplies, so hopefully they just think it out.
I'd like to trust our teachers to make that decision in terms of what they need. I mean, if there's things that they need in this first semester, let's be honest with one another. $100 doesn't go far at all. Neither does two, actually. Hold on one second, please. But I would say that I would trust the teacher to make that determination on whether they're going to spend this all in September, or whether they're going to use their card or their credit and say, look, you know what, I'm pretty good right now. I'm going to hold all this till next semester. I think that can be their determination without our telling them.
That's fine.
So I guess I'm pretty uncomfortable with this on a number of levels. And I just want to be clear, this is not going to support parents. I do appreciate that the burden of school supplies is a significant financial one for parents. But just to be clear, what we're talking about does not change the parental supply lists. It goes to teachers who also have a significant financial burden in.
This is for teachers, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But Secretary Garcia had talked a bunch about the burden on parents. And I would also appreciate not being interrupted. But and, you know, this is something that I worked on a bunch when I first got elected to the board, because I think it is an absolute tragedy that our teachers end up out of pocket for school supplies. And I would like us to figure out some solutions. There are a number of them. There are sites where there are specific asks made. You know, there's a whole supply side, demand side question in my mind. But I guess I'm going to make a few points. One is that, as I have said earlier tonight, one of our key responsibilities is fiscal responsibility. And to me, allocating $180,000 out of cash without any written proposal, any written materials, is not a particularly responsible way to do business. And I think that we shouldn't do that, because we can always, and we've done this before, where there's sort of a thought of the moment, and okay, let's allocate cash to do that, and I don't feel particularly good about that. I think we need to be more intentional than, you know, 5 minutes and a few words and $180,000. I also am uncomfortable, and I appreciate Mr. Martinez has cleared up the procurement issue, but you know, I have said before, I will die on this particular hill that we cannot, as a board, say that we're going to sole source something to a particular company. It is a recipe for corruption, so I would like us to stop doing that. And you know, there are procurement laws, and I appreciate the legwork and all of that, but you know, if we're going to allocate money for a purpose, we do that, and very often it can be done in a way that is legal, as our staff has pointed out, but I really think that to be a professional board, we need to be careful about how we do these things. I want us to solve the problem of teachers going out of pocket. I actually sort of like the idea, if we were going to do something, of meeting this out a little bit. As I have talked to teachers over the years, a big moment is at the semester when they've run out of tissues during cold and flu season, and the pencils have all been chewed on and broken. And those are the things that, in my unscientific survey of teachers over the years, that they need come January. It's, you know, again and again, it's like tissues and pencils and tissues and pencils. And, you know, I appreciate the sentiment that this comes from, but, you know, I think we also need to ask our teachers. And I did sort of say, you know, to the president of the NEA, who, not surprisingly, said we would rather have any extra money in our salaries. And I know this is one-time funding, so that would not be a good necessarily thing to do with this money. But you know, I'm uncomfortable here, and I really want to support our teachers not spending money out of pocket. I would like us to figure out ways to work on this solution, but I am not comfortable spending $270,000 or $180,000 with this little preparation, you know, the assurance from a secondhand conversation with our bond attorney that nothing will happen. I mean, there's just, as I say, I do not view this as a fiscally responsible move. I think there are ways that maybe we can approach the school supply issue and what teachers need in classrooms, but I'm not comfortable with this. Board Member Carrillo.
So Mr. Carvajal is here with a proposal from Office Depot, so we can see that. And then also a couple things. Tissues and pencils in January. Nothing would prohibit or preclude a teacher from not using this money until January. NEA, of course that's what they're going to say, because unfortunately I believe in too many cases there is, I believe, a lack of thorough understanding between what's recurring and what's not relative to things in the contract. And you know, if you want to, and we can't give bonuses, we know that, right? Because that's the whole anti-donation clause thing. And you know, I was there in the legislature arguing probably more than 6 or 7 times around how 6,000 or 6% is not enough. It barely gets us where we should be, and then certainly we're not catching up to the states around us. It's just made a little bit of headway. Relative to sole source, completely respect the idea and the rule of law and us not breaking it. And it was sole source when they did it in 2014. If anything, it's more sole source now because there is nobody else. Staples is not here anymore. And Healy Matthews, for anybody that's lived here long enough, the Healy Matthews is not here anymore. And you could do things online, but the great thing about doing this here with the 2 Office Depot stores that are here is we can really closely monitor the program in a way that they weren't even able to do in 2014. And so in speaking with the superintendent, we discussed sole source, and there wasn't the concern. There was the idea that yes, it would be brought up, that when we spoke, there wasn't the concern that this would be a problem with sole source. And I believe we would only be opening ourselves up for greater scrutiny if we were in Albuquerque, okay? We'd be opening ourselves up for greater scrutiny because there are a lot of different people. We'd probably put out an RFP because there are a lot of different people who could take this contract down there, but there aren't up here. And then in terms of arts and crafts and things like that, if Walmart or Target decided, oh my God, we're going to file a claim against the Santa Fe Public Schools, well, you couldn't do what Office Depot is doing for us in terms of especially monitoring the program. So anyway, do you feel like you want to see what Mr. Carvalho has with him or not, or what? I mean, I'm happy if we've just take a vote. I think, I agree with you also, Ms. Noble, just fundamentally, we've got to find other ways to do this, right? And then money from cash at the last minute. But in a way, that's what we did for communities and schools, because we're not going to let a bunch of kids wait in 6 different schools while we come up with maybe a different policy or a way to do something to get them the wraparound services they need, because everybody else except the public schools is dropping the ball, right? And with this too, everybody except the public schools really much drops the ball on giving teachers what they need to get in front of the classroom. So that's all for now.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Again, I would reiterate that it is not the board's role to decide procurement, no matter what.
We're not deciding procurement. I mean, obviously,
you are advocating for sole source again and again.
No, I will. When something sole source or appears to be, I will advocate for it. But I full well know I would never, ever, 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 preclude that Dr. Garcia and our team upstairs on the 2nd floor, that I know better than they do what is sole source and what needs to go out to RFP. I mean, I'm not directing them, because I can't. I can only ask the superintendent for something. I can't direct anybody else. And but my understanding of sole source versus going out for RFP is that we wouldn't, in going for sole source here, we would not be leaving ourselves open for liability. And if they think that we would be upstairs, well, then we wouldn't go for sole source, would we? We'd go to RFP. That's their determination to make upstairs, not mine or anyone's on the board.
Okay, well, thank you for the clarification. I guess I feel strongly that when we start discussing and making cases for a method of procurement from the dais on which the board sits, that it's a slippery slope, and it's actually not where we should be. And I love Office Depot. I've actually been staring at my little Office Depot calendar and I shop at the one at DeVargas all the time, and it really is one of my favorite stores because there's so much good stuff. Having said that, and I actually don't know why, maybe I have a perception and maybe next year we'll correct it, but we did all of our school supply shopping at Target this year. And they have a very good back to school section. And, I think, it's just, there are so many issues that are wrapped up here that I'm not comfortable. We have a motion. We have a second. I admire the inclination to work on this, but I think we need to work on this. And again, it's something that I have thought about and worked on a great deal. It was a little bit of an issue in the Martinez administration when they tried to give gift cards to teachers. This is not the first time this idea has been tried, I don't think that we can responsibly, and even communities and schools. And I would say then I was uncomfortable with the way that happened, that the sort of knee-jerk thing that we do sometimes when an issue comes up and sort of let's take it out of cash, I don't feel is responsible fiscal management. And I do think that we should spend a little bit more time before we spend this much money out of cash, and that we should make sure we have the right solution to the problem. So, all those in favor, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote. And the motion on the table is for $200 180,000 in total, with the estimate that we have 900 teachers, and that it is available for our teachers to decide when they spend that $200.
That's not the motion.
Okay.
Well, and the reason I say that is the motion is much simpler than that. It's
I was
just
trying to go through
basically,
all the details.
based on the number of teachers at $200 a teacher, having the superintendent of the district enter into a contract with Office Depot and for school supplies.
Or maybe enter into a contract with an appropriate provider, which very well may be Office Depot. Okay. Anyway.
That was not in the motion either. The motion is the motion. I hear what you're saying, and I totally respect you and the point of view on sole source and all of that. I really do. They're our office supply provider, unless you go online, in Santa Fe, and there's no more Healy Matthews.
Well, there is Matthews Office Supply.
Can we call for the question?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
Matthews
Paul, I'm
Office
done.
Supply does actually do office supplies, but not school supplies. Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and hopefully the record actually shows what the motion is, but I think we're reasonably clear. We'll do a roll call on this. Board Member Carrillo.
Yes.
Secretary Garcia. Yes. Vice President Price.
I'm going to say no, and I'm going to suggest that we probably should table this because we're going to need Maureen.
You can't table once there's a motion. You just got to see the motion through. You can bring it up later.
And bring it up, yeah. I'm just saying, because we're going to be tied here.
And the president votes no. So yes, the vote is tied, which means the motion fails.
All right.
Board Member Carrillo.
Appalled beyond all belief.
And in some senses, others may be feeling that way. Okay, legislative breakfast. Board Member Carrillo.
The vaping resolution that we passed unanimously, that should be on, we should have our agenda and things that we want that are important in advance of the legislative breakfast, so we're not wasting anybody's time. And so the vaping resolution should probably be there. And to have that in, and to do what we can to make sure that the governor puts it on the docket for this session and not to wait another year of having all these ridiculous companies, no, not ridiculous, these amoral, horrible companies addict more of our kids. So, I mean, I think we would want to pressure our northern delegation to work on that. Of course.
Vice President Price on that point.
I don't know if you've noticed, but serious lung damage it was reported this week.
I know.
From the CDC. Yeah, serious young people with serious life-altering lung damage.
Quicker than they would if they had smoked cigarettes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. So, and the other thing is, based on information that we've learned relative to how different branches of the district are certified, I just learned recently, as some of us did, around the ROTC. And I think that we should have one of our northern delegation sponsor legislation, probably not in this session because it is supposed to be money, but in the next session around making sure that we are doing what most other states do in having ROTC instructors be district certified. And even though we have time, right, until the legislative session. So I would ask that maybe the board consider if there's other things in finance or other things that you think are super important, that we utilize this hour and a half with our legislatures as best as possible.
Vice President Price.
I would like to add to that, according to what I've been able to ascertain, I would like us to ask the legislators to bring up a ban in the state of New Mexico on automatic weapons.
was also going to think about automatic weapons, but I do actually think that we should talk about education funding, perhaps. But Dr. Garcia.
Yes, Madam President, and just first of all to clarify, so I don't need to call, but I will follow with Ms. Cashman. Last year it was 8 to 9, and the year before, we're not clear, it may have been 7:30, so it is 8 to 9 this year. And so that was confirmed, so now we know the time. But more importantly is the issue around how K-5 rolled out, K-5 plus, and the flexibility of what are possibilities there around K-5 of funding, you know, entire schools and knowing that we could plan early for that. And, you know, I think that could make a big, it's a high leverage strategy. It could make a big difference. But if they aren't willing to do that, allow us to, if it is the receiving teacher, if I have 3 grades, then fund the program. If I have 2 grades, fund the program. Because I think it's really unfair to have these kids not have the services. The extended learning, we're still trying to figure out if the funding is adequate enough for transportation. And then the other piece is around the at-risk and also how they're calculating staffing. There seems to be some discrepancy between what happens between what we submit, what the PED submits to the LFC, and then when they put it on the 1% table, how they calculate what they think a raise is going to be. It was off all over the state. And consequently, the legislature leaves thinking, oh, we gave you 4.5% for at-risk, and we gave you X amount % for salaries. And there's also a persistent communication around the raises. They say, well, Santa Fe exceeded the raises, and other districts exceeded the raises. We gave you enough money for a 6%. What they didn't recognize is that the language says, you know, the minimum. You have to get them to the minimum, right? You do 6%, but then you got to get them to the minimum. The average across the state was 9% to get you to the minimum, not 6%. So I think it's those kinds of pieces that we certainly can feed, you know, and get prepared for you and give to you or email you, that we would like to discuss. And then the capital, Linda felt like we could talk to them later about capital, that we didn't have to have all our requests right now, because there probably will be a lot more pork than even last year. All our requests were met. We have asked staff to be looking at the major big pieces, and Dr. Ryan is also looking at some stuff. I've asked Ms. Wagner and her team to look, and so we can also have some preliminary capital requests.
Secretary Garcia.
Just really quick, I certainly understand what Board Member Carrillo and Vice President Cashman are saying in regards to ammunition, rifles, et cetera, but I definitely would like to take the lead. What the superintendent is actually bringing forward is as to what's happening in the schools, what's happening in the school district, and as into, because some of our legislators actually, they don't work in the classrooms. They're not there every single day. Unless we tell them what's happening, they don't understand what's happening. And in regards to capital, I don't know how, I'm totally familiar with capital. I just don't know if it actually hurts the district as a whole. Then I don't think they should give us $20,000, $19,000 for this playground, or $40,000 for this fence. Because if it doesn't fund an entire project on my campuses, then I'm going to talk to the state legislature. Say, don't even give me $15,000 for that playground, because it hurts us. It doesn't even help us out. So whenever they say, well, we're going to throw you $20,000, $80,000, no. When I want to talk to my district individuals, if you're going to fund a playground equipment, you need to give me $120,000 for this playground equipment.
It does have to be fully funded.
Right, because little 40,000 here, 40,000 there, honestly, I might want to just hold on to it.
The phases have
So
been difficult.
how we go about asking for capital this year, maybe we should just plan that out. So we still have a little bit of time to figure out how we're going to ask if we even want to ask for capital.
Board Member Carrillo.
So, so Linda said meeting from 8 to 9, right, Linda Siegel? Okay. What I think we should do is have it from 7:30 to 9. And if they want to have breakfast, they can come at 7:30 and get their breakfast and sit down and start the meeting at 9. Because my experience with 8 o'clock, because my experience, and I'm frustrated now, my experience with 8 of these things is that everyone chit-chats and has coffee when they get here, and so your 8 o'clock meeting with breakfast really doesn't start till about 8:25, and we try to cram in so much in 35 minutes. It's just more than unrealistic. So I think it can be the breakfast meeting with legislators, and that's great. And if you want to come fix yourself some breakfast, or at Milagro, come for breakfast between 7:30 and 8. Meeting begins sharply at 8 o'clock. Because really, even just the things that were discussed right here, right now, that's well over 1 hour's worth of discussion. And that's without them even talking. And they're like us, they love to hear themselves talk.
So I think we should have, and Dr. Garcia, I am guessing, because you alluded to it this way, that there will be written materials as there have been in the past, and I think we should be very coherent with that. I agree with Secretary Garcia that I think we need to lead with the educational funding issues. I think he's completely right. I've sat through some recent LESC, Legislative Education Study Committee hearings, and honestly, it is helpful, I think, very often for our legislators to hear directly from districts. So I would suggest that that be the meat, so to speak, of what we talk about. I would suggest that on the order of other things, assault weapons bans, vaping, environmental issues, and many of the other things we are passionate about, that we, as board members, email any requests. I think we've heard two distinctly tonight in terms of vaping and assault weapons, but I think we should think about this, and if it is amenable to you, Dr. Garcia, maybe we could look at the list either at the next board meeting, which is scheduled for the 3rd of September, or at some point before the 18th, so that we can just review and weigh in. And I think if we could do it at a board meeting, it'd be great, because then we can discuss and... Yes, to put it on for a discussion item. And then ultimately, I hope that we as a board can, have this list in sort of a rough order of priority, which my preference would be to have the education stuff first. Okay, any further discussion on this issue? Vice President Price.
I mean, we just spent, I don't know how much time on school safety. I think we need to push, do something now. I think an assault weapon ban and what do you call it?
High capacity
clips,
magazines.
High capacity magazines. We need to let them know. We want them to do something, and if the feds are not going to do it, New Mexico can do it.
So did you want that on board discussion for next time, or?
We can discuss it again.
Right.
But I just.
So again, the path I just laid out was to have
the 3rd.
a written, roughly prioritized list
Okay.
that we would look at on the 3rd as a discussion item. Okay, we good? Board discussion, anything else?
Board discussion
member?
for the next meeting, middle school soccer.
Anything else? Okay, advanced planning, any
Hold on.
changes?
For board discussion for the next meeting, should we also, because we didn't make we tabled Monte tonight, so procedurally, shouldn't we also then decide as a board how to move forward and to do so in board discussion?
So, my preference would be to leave that to the superintendent as to when to bring that back. We tabled it tonight. I think Monte would like a chance to look at the issues that were prepared. So I am comfortable leaving that with
Fine,
Dr.
that's
Garcia.
great. I just don't want it to get lost in the shuffle.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think Monte will let us lose it in the. Yep. Okay, advanced planning. We have the legislative breakfast on Wednesday, September 18th from 8 to 9 a.m. at Milagro Middle School. Maybe we could have that next time on advanced planning. But other than that, it looks like we will be not having a study session next week. We will have a board meeting just after Labor Day on September 3rd.
Excuse me, so it's not tentative, it's gone.
There's no.
Tentative is the executive session.
What's tentative is the executive session on the 3rd and the study session on the 10th. There is no study session next week. Next week is the 27th. So just to say, we won't be together on in this room again until next Tuesday, or until Tuesday, September 3rd. 2 weeks. Yes, thank you. Okay, anything else on advanced planning? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.